everybody, for our final GT Cup race of what's been a busy but a beautiful weekend here at Brands Hatch on the Grand Prix circuit. We've got the sprint race coming up for you. That's the 8th round of the 2024 Championship. We had round 7 earlier on today, our second sprint race of the weekend. So let's look back at some of the highlights from earlier on today.
About to get round 7 of the championship underway. Our second pit stop race of the weekend is about to go green here at Brands Hatch. The Mercedes gets a really good start by the look of things. He's going to lead the charge up towards Paddock Hill Bend for the first time, with Paul Bailey slotting in second position at the wheel of the Brabham. They turn their way through Paddock Hill, and by the look of things, there's a little bit of contact. Through 360 degrees goes Charles Dawson, and I think the car that made slight contact with him there was possibly the number 11, the McLaren Artura, in the hands of Michael Arant. So it looks as though Charles Dawson is going to have a lot of work to do to work his way back up through the field. And off and through the gravel trap has gone Ian Logie. So the man who was leading the way has gone off through the gravel trap. That was at Clearways Corner, which now means that the Brabham, in the hands of Paul Bailey, leads the way. And there is the damage to Michael Arant's Paddock Motorsport McLaren Artura. Looks as though Chris Murphy has a problem, so the Woodrow Motorsport E46 of Chris Murphy destined for the pit lane, surely. Charles Dawson is back on it again. Can he squeeze his way through and ahead of Stephen Walton? The T Parker Racing Porsche almost alongside, has the inside line, and again, perfect overtaking opportunity for Charles Dawson. He really is very keen on the brakes at Paddock Hill Bend and very confident. Stephen Walton is trying to fight back on the run up towards Druids, but can't quite work his magic. So it does look as though the Team Parker Mercedes has gone through and ahead of the Morpheus car. So David Brabham back down pit road, but he is coming out behind the Mercedes that's now in the hands of Richard Neary. So out onto the circuit comes the Brabham, but there is Richard Neary already making his way up towards Druids. He'll be knowing already where his car has the advantage over the Group GTO Mercedes. Mercedes runs in Group GTO, but it is fully compliant with GT3 specifications, so it hasn't got any air restrictors removed from it. They are just running it in GT3 to accumulate points in that category rather than GTO. So for the lead of the race, David Brabham in a straight line is going to ease his way through and by, and there wasn't a great deal that Richard Neary could do about that. The extra grunt of the Brabham BT62 tells, and through to not just pick up the lead of the race, but pick up the lead in Group GTO. The start-finish line is named after his late father, who 10 years to the day very sadly passed away. But it's not a time for sadness, it's a time for celebration. David Brabham's going to come through and win round 7 of the 2024 GT Cup Championship, partnered up with Paul Bailey, who put a fantastic stint in the early stages. And remember, that car is running not a 5th gear, it's running a 6th gear in the place of 5th gear. Through to claim the top honours in Group GTH will come the number 9 Fossetti Aston Martin, Matthew Higgins and Mikey Porter, bringing that car home. Over the start-finish line also comes Ian Logie and Richard Neary. The third place car of Seamus Jennings and Greg Caton comes through. Ray Harris's Ginetta over the start-finish line. He'll finish in 7th place, 3rd in Group GTC.
Great to see Paul Bailey and David Brabham win in the Brabham here on the 10th anniversary of his father's death. Fantastic win for them. It's also great to see new teams and new drivers join the GT Cup Championship, and one of those new driver pairings and new teams for 2024 is Jolt Racing. We managed to catch up with their 2 drivers earlier on this weekend. So Jolt Racing are a new team on the GT Cup entry list for 2024. John, first of all, it's great to see you back in motorsport after what's been quite a long break.
Yeah, thanks. Thrilled to be back in the motorsport paddock, and certainly here with the GT Cup. So it has been a bit of a break for me. 15 plus years. So absolutely thrilled to be back with Jolt.
You bring a raft of experience into the team. Your teammate you're racing with this year, Rupert, fair to say, has less experience. So you'll be working together to ensure that he gets up to speed and gets in the sweet spot.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very much the objective from this year. So. Thrilled to have Rupert in the team. Rupert joined Jolt on our formation last year, so fresh into motorsport. We're now in year 2, so we're doing the sort of pro sporting combo. So hoping to go on a real big learning journey this year, and then carry on to the next level in GTs after 2024.
Rupert, they say that when you're a new driver in motorsport, the learning curve's quite steep. Well, it's almost vertical for you. You know, you're out in the McLaren 570S GT4, having driven Citroen C1s last year.
Yeah, it's quite the jump. Yeah, from coming from it's like a trajectory like this for me, basically. Yeah, very exciting, but quite nerve-wracking out there at the same breath. You know, it's quite the curve. Yeah, learning curve for me.
So based on that learning curve and how steep it is, you know, what are your objectives? Ideally, what would you like to achieve in 2024?
I really what I want to do is learn the car, come from, you know, as I say, the C1, which is obviously, you know, you can more or less text your mum while you're going around with that one, and then you jump into something like this, and it's very different. So I just want to get time on the track, try and keep out of the way of people, but try and advance and keep going, keep pushing, keep getting quicker. As long as I come in and I'm gaining seconds, then I'm happy. And then I think our goal as a team is next year, then we choose what we're going to do and where we're going to go, but then be competitive. So this is just being out with the bigger boys and girls and learning my trade, really.
And I suppose for the two of you as well, you know, you had that time together last year, albeit in a very different car, but you know how each other works, you know how each other can bounce off each other and ensure that you cement that strong relationship.
Yeah, I mean, actually, that was quite deliberate. So we've got a bit of a sort of 3 to 5 year plan to climb the motorsport ladder. And so the maiden season we did not only as a new team but together as teammates was quite deliberate. With Rupert being new to motorsport, but also us sort of planning a journey out together to get into endurance motorsport. It was a great place for us to start. So yeah, we worked together for the whole of last year. We did a 24-hour race together. We did pit stops together. You know, everything from driver changes, fuel stops, and all the kind of stuff in a first season of motorsport for Rupert that, you know, is an integral part of some of the more senior GT racing categories. So it was quite deliberate and a great learning year.
And finally, Rupert, you know, we've had a couple of conversations earlier on in the season and here this weekend. It also seems as though not only are you focused on wanting to do well this season, but you're also relaxed at the same time. You've got that perfect balance of enjoying it, but also taking it seriously.
I think, to be honest with you, half of my love of motorsport is this side of it as well. So the track side, and yeah, I love, you know, the team and the whole camaraderie and just the whole day, really. I'd spend a day up here regardless of whether I'm in the car, basically. But getting out there is obviously super special. But yeah, I just love all of it, really.
Great to see a new team in the entry list. Have a great season, guys.
Thanks very much.
Great,
Cheers.
yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Brands Hatch has also seen the return onto the tracks of the Kendall Developments Brabham BT62 in the hands of Paul Bailey, sharing with ex-Formula One driver and, of course, Le Mans race winner David Brabham. We managed to catch up with David earlier on this weekend. David, it was amazing in the off-season when we saw you on social media officially announce your retirement from retirement. Yes. You're back behind the wheel and of a very special car, the Brabham BT62.
Yeah, it was a great moment, actually. You know, when I spoke to Paul Bailey and told him what was happening with Brabham Automotive, and I said, look, one day I'd love to race with you, and he just said, well, why don't you race with me this year? And I was going, yes, that sounds brilliant. So yeah, terrific to be here at Brands Hatch, racing the Brabham BT62. The car's flying, it's really fast, and I feel really comfortable in it, and yeah, really looking forward to the rest of the season.
Brands Hatch is a very special place to race, but for you, you know, racing a car that's got the family name on it, when you head over the start-finish line, you're going down the straight that's got your father's name on it.
Yeah, it's a pretty unique track for us, to be fair. I mean, we've got a lot of history here with my dad, my brothers and I, having won a lot of races here, and obviously Brabham Straight, named after my father. So yeah, driving a Brabham, you know, with a Brabham in a Brabham on Brabham Straight, there's nowhere else in the world that really happens. So that's quite unique, like I said, so very special.
And sometimes the star aligns in different ways as well, because it's the 19th of May today, exactly 10 years after your father sadly passed away.
Yeah, it's sort of celebrating 10 years of my father's life. You know, he had an incredible career, touched so many people's lives, especially around here in the Brands Hatch area, because he used to hang around here quite a lot. And yeah, it's just a wonderful opportunity to be here racing a Brabham on Brabham Straight, as we said, on the 10th anniversary. As you say, the stars have aligned.
Motorsport back in the day when your father was racing, you know, similar in some respects, but also very different to motorsport today. And some of that is case in point with the fuel that you're running in the car. For the first time ever, we're seeing an eco fuel out in GT Cup.
Yeah, we have a biofuel this weekend and for the rest of the season, thanks to Sustain. Gloriton have produced a great product there with farming waste made out of straw. And if you ever see the colour of it, it's clear, it's like water, it's amazing. And actually it has a very unique smell to it. But, you know, this is all about the sustainability drive that everyone's going through. You know, Rowe Oils, we've got association with Rowe Oils, with plant-based oil as well. So, you know, we're just trying to do our bit to make sure that there's minimal impact on the environment with our racing.
Well, it's great to see you out in GT Cup. Good luck for the 2024 season and good luck for this weekend.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Well, Team ABBA Racing are no strangers to GT Cup, and neither is Richard Neary, Andy and Loggy, who are teamed up together in the Team ABBA car for this year. The Mercedes AMG GT3 that runs in Group GTO has had a great start to the 2024 championship season. We managed to catch up with Ian Loggy to gauge his thoughts on how the year has begun. Ian, it was a fantastic day yesterday for Team ABBA Racing. Yourself and Richard Neary claiming a win in GTO and an overall win.
Yeah, good start and good conditions yesterday as well. We actually expected rain. It looked like rain first thing in the morning, but it was absolutely fine. A little bit cold yesterday, but today the weather's amazing here at Brands Hatch.
I was really impressed with Richard at the start of the pit stop race. Started third on the grid, was leading by halfway around the first lap and built up a 20-second lead for you.
Yeah, he was really good. He's been on fire all weekend. He's got in the car right away, and yeah, I've been a little bit off this weekend in the Mercedes. I had a 24-hour race last week in a Porsche GT3R, and jumping back in the Mercedes, it just takes a few laps. But back out this morning, and things are looking good. So I'm happy today.
There's been some resurfacing just in key areas around the Brands Hatch circuit this week, particularly into Sheen and Stirling. Is that something that you could notice the difference in the car yesterday in the dry conditions through those areas?
Yeah, for sure, it's faster through there, no doubt about it. And there's some concrete at Sheen as well that you can use. However, there's two posts there this morning, so we couldn't use that this morning. But the track's definitely faster. It used to be really bumpy going into Stirling's, the left hairpin. Now it's really nice.
Well, brilliant day yesterday. Good luck for today.
Yeah.
It's Brands Hatch in Kent for the second weekend of racing in the GT Cup, where the cars will head through Paddock Hill Bend and up towards the tight right-hand hairpin at Druids. From there, back downhill and along the Cooper Straight and through the sweeping left-hander at Surtees before they head out onto the Grand Prix circuit, through Pilgrim's Drop, down Hawthorne Hill and into Hawthorne Bend. From there, it's through Westfield Corner and up to the blind right-hander at Sheen Curve, and the final two corners through the left-hander at Stirling's Bend and into the very tricky Clearways and Clark Curve over the start-finish line, and that will complete a lap of the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit. Well, the Grand Prix circuit has 11 turns, but it also has enormous undulations as well. You can see just how much the circuit varies in terms of its altitude. 2.433 miles is the full Grand Prix circuit. And of course, this was the venue where Nigel Mansell scored his first Formula One win back in 1985. 30 metres of elevation, challenging corners for the drivers to deal with. And I can vouch personally for those elevation changes, having jogged 2 laps of the Grand Prix circuit on Friday evening. And 38 minutes it took. Somewhat slower than the cars will be doing when they head out onto the grid very, very shortly. So one of the support races is coming to a conclusion here at Brands Hatch. And as ever, the marshals are out on circuit, making sure that they not only provide the flag signals to the drivers, but also making sure should an incident unfold, that they are fully prepared and well trained with dealing with whatever incident comes their way. One of the key aspects is, should there be a serious incident, that very seldom happens, how do you extract a driver out of a car without causing any further injury? Well, the team practice that. They practice the extraction of a driver, which nowadays is a lot easier than it used to be in some of the GT4 cars. They have a hatch where they can remove the driver out of the roof. On other occasions, there may not be a hatch, and the team will go to work to stabilise the driver. In will go a spine board, and then they will very carefully make sure that they remove the driver with minimum discomfort, with minimum movement at all, to ensure that they keep the neck, the back, and all aspects absolutely straight. And this is a key, vital part that all of our volunteer marshals and rescue crews do. not necessarily at every race meeting, but it's all part of the critical training that happens, supported by Motorsport UK, that ensures that the British rescue crews, medical teams and marshals are the best in the world. And they practiced that here earlier on this weekend at Brands Hatch with Forsetti Motorsport and one of their Aston Martins. So we're just waiting for this support race to come to a halt. Before then, our GT Cup Championship competitors will be heading out onto the circuit. Now, there's still a bit of time to go in this support race, which gives us the opportunity to talk about some of the other aspects of what's going to be going on over the course of the 2024 Championship season. Of course, we've already had our 4 race meetings, our 4 races at Donington Park for rounds 1 and 4 of the Championship. We're now heading towards round 8, having had the 5th, 6th and the 7th rounds already over the course of this weekend at Brands Hatch. But where do we go for the rest of the season? Well, in answer to that is in just 2 weeks' time, we'll be at Snetterton in Norfolk for rounds 9, 10, 11 and 12 of the Championship. They take place over the course of the weekend of the 1st and the 2nd of June. And then we're also back out on circuit in the final weekend of June. On Saturday, the 29th of June, we go to Alton Park, but it's always a different format at Alton Park. It's a single-day race meeting, so rounds 13 and 14 of the Championship will take place there. But there'll be no sprint races. There will be 2 longer pit stop races at Alton Park, before we then go back to the normal format for the rest of the year. The 5th event of the year is rounds 15, 16, 17 and 18. They take place at Silverstone, the home of the British Grand Prix, on the Grand Prix circuit over the course of the weekend of the 27th and the 28th of July. Then we have a month off before we go back to the racing circuits on the 14th and the 15th of September at Donington Park for rounds 19, 20, 21 and 22 of the Championship. We started the season at Donington Park, but that was on the national circuit. When we go back in September, we'll be on the Grand Prix circuit. And our final weekend of racing, the 7th and final weekend of racing, takes place the first weekend of October, the 5th and the 6th of October, back at Snetterton on the 300 circuit for the second time. And the grand finale will take place there, where we will, no doubt, as happens every year, it goes down to the very final weekend of racing and usually the very final race of the season before we know who will be our overall GT Cup champion for 2024 and who will follow in the footsteps of our former champions. The overall champions have changed over the years. We can guide you through, I think, some standings as well as to where we are over the course of the early stages of this season. Well, the overall championship standings at the moment, it's the Group GTH Aston Martin from Forsetti Motorsport of Matthew Higgins and Mikey Porter that top the standings on 164 points, but only 3 points adrift of them are the leaders of Group GTC at the moment, which is the number 2 Top Cats Racing Lamborghini Huracan of Charlotte Gilbert and Tom Rawlings. Then a further 25 points, 26 points back from that is the car that leads the Group GTO standings overall at the moment, but is third in the overall championship table, Richard Neary, and the man we heard from earlier on, Ian Loggy, in their Team ABBA Racing Mercedes. Before in 4th place, it's Charles Dawson and Seb Morris, back to Group GTH. They are 4th overall in the standings. 5th overall in the standings, it's the Kendall Developments Brabham for this weekend, Paul Bailey and David Brabham. And Miles Rudman, making his debut season in GT Cup, is only 4 points adrift of them and is only 6 points adrift of moving up to 4th in the overall table at the wheel of his Team Parker Racing Porsche. So it's been a good start to the season for Miles Rudman. The GCAT Racing Porsche, Seamus Jennings and Greg Caton are 7th, as you can see. Before then, the 2nd of the Forsetti Motorsport Aston Martins with Jodie Sloss and Rihanna O'Meara Hunt are 8th. Rupert Williams and John Ingram in the Jolt Racing Group GTA McLaren 570S are 9th, and Jay Shepherd completes the top 10. He would have been much higher up, but he's had a difficult weekend here at Brands Hatch. Then it's a Team Parker Racing car of Keith Bush, or Doc Bush as it's known, before the first of the Morpheus Racing Mercedes. Newcomers to GT Cup, Michael Aranta, Jake Poole for Paddock Motorsport with their McLaren Artura of 13th. Chris Murphy, who will be absent from this race because he's had a exhaust manifold issue in the Woodrow Motorsport BMW, so he'll be a non-starter in the race that's coming up, is 14th. And Warren Gilbert's 15th, but he's only doing the sprint races this year, so it's understandable he's not adding to the points tally the same as the others. Then it's John Curry and Phil Keane, or as it is Marcus Clutton, sharing with John Curry for this weekend. Then it's the SVG Motorsport pairing of James Townsend and Leona Theobald. Richard Chamberlain, who had a good run yesterday but has had issues with the car today, is next up. And Jensen Lunn and Steve Burgess, who've had luck this year, but it's all been bad luck with an engine problem at Donington Park, scuppering their weekend there, and a large off in qualifying yesterday, causing a lot of damage to the Radical RXC, and thankfully Steve walked away from what was a fairly large accident. So that's how the championship table looks coming into this 8th round here at Brands Hatch. 25 points for a group win if you have got enough drivers in your respective group. And as we say, who's going to follow in the footsteps of our 2023 champions, Paul Bailey and Ross Wiley? Simon Orange and Michael O'Brien stitched up the championship in 2022. Richard Neary, who's on the grid, claimed the championship with his son, partnered up in 2021 in their Mercedes. Simon Orange and Josh Jackson claimed victory in 2020. Steve Ruston and John Whitehouse in 2019. Chris Murphy, who should still be on the grid had it not been for his problems in the BMW. He was a joint champion when he was partnered up with Adam Hatfield back in 2018. And then you go back, Graham Davidson, Jordan Witt, Jim Geddy, Derek Johnston, Andy Ruin, Marco Pullen, all of those champions tracing the history of this championship right the way back to the early stages of 2010. Another driver we managed to catch up with earlier on over the course of this weekend is a driver who's making his debut in GT Cup at the wheel of the Team Parker Racing Mercedes. We caught up with Charles Dawson.
Charles, yourself and Seb Morris might be new to the GT Cup Championship, but you have had a fantastic start to the season in Group GTH.
Yeah, it's been really solid. I think obviously in Donington, I can't remember our results. I think a win into 3 podiums, and then here yesterday was a really solid day. Again, a couple of podiums, so pace is strong. It's my first race weekend at Brands Hatch, so learning the circuit and getting up to speed. But car feels mega, and the sun's shining today, which is nice. So yeah.
It's all about the package as well, surely, isn't it? You know, yourself, Seb Morris, the car, Team Parker Racing, all working in synergy, and that's what brings the results that you've seen.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as everyone says, it's not just about the drivers. Obviously, Team Parker very experienced in all sorts of racing. We've got Ben Newman as engineer, and he is fantastic. And obviously Joe, our head team manager and mechanic, is super experienced. They were with the car when they won British GT in 2018 or 19, can't remember. It's a very experienced team, and for me, it gives me a lot of confidence as someone who's fairly new to GT racing. So, yeah.
You must gain extra confidence as well when you look back at the entry list in Group GTH. It's a very, very competitive group.
Yeah, it's really strong. I think we did a few races last year, and it was competitive then. And obviously the Forsettis are really strong. Mikey Porter is, I think probably one of the quickest drivers here in the class. And it's nice to have them here competing, and also in British GT. So, and then you've obviously got Paddock and the rest of the guys here. So yeah, it's a strong field, and just got to keep do what we're doing. And it's good fun.
Do you think that doing that double campaign, dovetailing GT Cup with British GT, and the extra seat time that gives you at the similar circuits helps?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, everyone knows that the more seat time you can get in a position as an amateur, it obviously helps. You've still got to get up to speed, you've still got to put the times in, and we work hard behind the scenes. But yeah, we're doing the first 2 rounds, going to see what happens the rest of the season. But it is, for anyone coming into British GT, I couldn't recommend doing at least a few rounds of GT Cup, if not the whole season, to prepare yourself. So it's a great series for amateurs starting out in GT racing.
Well done, congratulations, good luck for the rest of the weekend.
Yeah, cheers, thank you very much.
So good to catch up with Charles Dawson there. He'll be driving the Mercedes GT4 that is identical to the 2 cars that you can see the sun glinting off the windscreens here at what has been a glorious Brands Hatch. Those are the 2 Morpheus examples. It really has been the perfect weekend. When the sun goes behind a cloud, you can still tell it's only spring and not summer, because there's a slight chill. But crumbs, when the clouds disappear and the sun comes out with the very light breeze that you've got, it's rather warm to say the least. And it certainly was warm for the drivers in the pit stop race earlier on. I caught up with Doc Bush when he was returning back after the pit stop race earlier on. And to say that he looked shattered was an understatement. A big bottle of water in his hand, glugging away. It's still a very red face. And Doc, is a fit guy as well. But he was saying, it was tough out there. It was very tough out there, because it's not just the fact that you are out there on a sunny day. It's that heat penetrating through the windscreen, whilst you potentially are not able to open the windows much, as you can see on the Brabham there. There's only a small little sliding window that you can get. Some of the cars do have aircon, and some of that aircon is quite effective, but you don't want to use it too much, because it might detract from the performance of the car. You've also got a crash helmet on and a balaclava and lots of flameproof overalls, and you get the heat soak from the engine and the gearbox. So it does mean that racing a car is a very, very uncomfortable thing. You don't notice it when you're driving it. It's when you stop, that's when you notice it. Sitting there rather forlornly in the garages the Woodrow Motorsport BMW E46 M3 that should have been in the hands of Chris Murphy. Chris has already left the circuit. He was parked up beside me in the paddock area. I know he's already gone. Exhaust manifold issues with that car, which talking to him does mean that to get to the manifold issues and sort it out, it means engine out. So that's why they have withdrawn that car for this sprint race. Another car that went missing, of course, earlier on this weekend was the Radical RXC, as we know, with the problems that befell Steve Burgess yesterday. Get well soon, Steve. Hopefully the bruising will ease in the next couple of days. Richard Chamberlain had mechanical issues with his Porsche 935, and also the National Motorsport Academy Lotus Evora of Jay Shepherd that went so well in the opening weekend at Donington Park has been slightly troubled this weekend. He finished 19th and last yesterday. He was a non-starter in the pit stop race yesterday and also non-started in the pit stop race earlier on today. So it's been a difficult weekend for him. Now, the reason the cars haven't been released as yet is that you can see that there is some sort of fluid, whether it be lubricant, antifreeze, oil, whatever, has been put down on the circuit. And that looks as though that's the new piece of tarmac that was only laid earlier on this weekend. So, as ever, our fantastic Brands Hatch marshals doing the job of putting down the, I'm going to say cement dust. It's not. You don't usually put cement dust onto tarmac, but the dry powder that goes down there that absorbs whatever's been placed down there on the circuit. And then once you've got that down there, the next thing is to sweep away all the residual mess, because, of course, all of that residual powder that's there, when the cars run over, it takes a massive cloud into the windscreen of the car behind. So they will be working hard to get that done as quickly as possible. But, of course, they need to make sure that they have covered every area that might just be a little bit slippy. Say, if it's oil, it's going to be slippy. The worst thing, actually, is antifreeze, because it doesn't evaporate. And it's slippy as well. So they'll be working hard. And that's why all of the cars are nosing out of their garages, looking rather relaxed, because he knows he's not going to be racing in this sprint race because he's a pro driver and he can't do so, is David Brabham, who we caught up with. And he'll be watching the footage on YouTube, one would have thought. And everybody else is poised and ready to enjoy what is our final GT Cup Championship race of the weekend here at Brands Hatch. I say before we pack things away, and just in 2 weeks' time we'll be back out to do it all again at another circuit on the MSV Books Snetterton on the 300 circuit there. But it really has just been the most perfect weekend here at Brands Hatch, and it's not that often really as a driver, particularly as an amateur driver, you get the opportunity to race on the Grand Prix circuit. And we're hugely thankful that GT Cup is one of those championships which every year gets the opportunity to race on the Grand Prix circuit. And for this man here, Miles Rudman, it's the first time he's ever raced on the Grand Prix circuit. Miles has been racing the little 5/8 scale motorcycle engine legend cars for the last few years. He's a 3 times champion in that, and that is a difficult championship to win once, let alone 3 times. That gives you an idea of the pedigree of Miles Rudman. But they only ever race on the Brands Hatch Indy circuit here, whether it be supporting the likes of the Quick Fit British Touring cars, whether it be the likes of supporting the American Speed Festival, which has the European NASCAR series in it, whether it be the likes of supporting the British Truck Racing Championship. Those are the kinds of events that legends support, but they're always on the Indy circuit. He has never wandered out onto the Grand Prix circuit. I was saying to Miles earlier on, what's it like? He said, it's quick, it's narrow, and wow, there's not much runoff. So I think it was a bit of a shock for him as to what the Grand Prix circuit was like. Whereas this man here, who also races for Team Parker Racing, a Porsche that we've just turned away from, he's a man who's raced around here, Brands Hatch, many a time. A lot of it on 2 wheels rather than 4, that being Doc Bush. Bopping away to the music. That looks as though that was AC/DC there, and Charles Dawson enjoying the music. And from lots of horsepower to 1 horsepower, look, the local wildlife enjoying the sunshine here at Brands Hatch. I think about a minute before the pit lane opens, so it won't be that much longer before the cars are released out onto an outlet. The final bit of clearing up has been done. The final bit of sweeping up has been done. The last of the recovery trucks is just making its way down the pit lane and is going to appear behind Doc Bush's Porsche, I would have thought, in a second. So there's the Team Parker Racing Porsche in the hands of the former motorcycle racer. His teammate, which is Miles Rudman, lines up behind, and then there'll be a recovery truck trying to squeeze its way through, which I think has got a BMW one from the last support race, which was one of the front-running cars before that broke down. That trackside recovery, again, another fundamental part of the team here at Brands Hatch, dealing with all of the cars that occasionally break down out on circuit and bring them back into the paddock area. So now that the course is clear. The green light comes on at the end of the pit lane, and the competitors for round 8 of the 2024 GT Cup Championship make their way out onto the circuit. We know there's a couple of gaps on the grid. There'll be a gap on the 6th row of the grid where Chris Murphy's car, the BMW, should have been. That exhaust manifold issue curtailing his involvement for the rest of the weekend. There's a gap at the back of the grid where we should have had the National Motorsport Academy Lotus Evora, but that car's been rather recalcitrant this weekend. It's been a bit like a troublesome teenager. It's just not wanted to obey the rules and has given, I'm afraid, National Motorsport Academy a few hours work to try and get it sorted, but they eventually decided, it just wasn't going to happen this weekend, so they'll hopefully be back out and back on the front foot again at Snetterton. So disappointing that they had such a great weekend at Donington Park and it didn't happen there. So there's Paul Bailey, the very rare Brabham BT62. Paul is a huge collector of very rare cars, has a fantastic collection which I think encompasses most of the prestige brands that you could ever wish to see, and some very rare cars amongst it. But the one great thing about Paul is he does bring them out, he does race them. We've seen him racing his Lamborghini Huracan in GT Cup in the past, we've seen him racing Aston Martins and Porsches. He's also come out at the wheel of what is a very rare car, the McLaren MP412C Can-Am, which was one of only a handful built, and again is another very, very valuable car. I think he subsequently sold that one on, and equally as much this Brabham, very, very rare beast indeed. So there's the quick dry that's been put down, not just through Sheen Curve but also through Stirling's, as you can see. So at least it gives the drivers this outlap to head on to the grid the opportunity to understand where the surface may change. And we are still enjoying beautiful blue skies, as you can see. Over 20 degrees, 21.2 degrees. That will be the air temperature. The track temperature, I would imagine, is going to be up around 30 at the moment. It's usually about 10 degrees, 8 degrees, 9 degrees higher. So it's going to be around about 30 degrees track temperature, which gives the teams a problem. I was chatting to Charles Dawson earlier on, and he did say the track after the pit stop race earlier on, there just wasn't as much grip. There wasn't as much grip as they were expecting. It had changed significantly from qualifying this morning. And I said, well, it will have done, Charles, because the ambient temperature's gone up. Therefore, the air isn't as dense, so the car isn't getting as much air in. So the combustion doesn't work quite as well. You're a little bit down on power because of that. And equally, the tyres, you're now at the point where the tyres are going beyond the ideal operating parameters of them. All of those things, that's why the track gets slower as it gets warmer. And I think it's even warmer now than it was in the pit stop race. So I think we are probably going to struggle to better the lap times that have been done. And case in point of that, earlier on today, the fastest lap time by David Brabham was sat in a time of 1 minute 24.245. Well, yesterday he was 3/4 of a second quicker, a 1 minute 23.549 yesterday. So case in point, the track is slower today than it was yesterday. So heading up onto the grid comes Paul Bailey. Because this is the sprint race, it means that the pro drivers cannot get involved. Because it is the sprint race on the Sunday, it also means the pro sporting drivers cannot get involved. So when we give you the grid, we'll also tell you who is behind the wheel of each one. And even though David Brabham's not driving, he's not bothered taking off the overalls as yet. He's still a fundamental part of the team. So all of the team personnel being now asked to leave the grid. Our cameraman Shane wandering off the grid as well with the RF camera, and then we will get the rolling lap underway very, very shortly. You can see that gap behind the Mercedes there on the 5th row of the grid where we should have had Chris Murphy's BMW. So there, just behind the white and blue Mercedes, there'll be a gap, and that's where we should have had the Beamer. But the last few officials leaving the track now. There's the gap, look, on the left-hand side of the screen. That's where we should have had Chris Murphy's BMW, so it is not present. And Michael Arant should not close up that gap. He should leave a car gap between himself and the Mercedes. So off they go then on their formation lap. Let's guide you through the grid, and let's also tell you the drivers that have been nominated as the drivers that will be competing in round 8 of the 2024 GT Cup Championship, our final race of the weekend here at Brands Hatch. Pole position goes the way of Richard Neary, who lines up on pole position. It's Paul Bailey that sits alongside, with row 2 of the grid being Seamus Jennings in the Porsche, and the Top Cats Racing Lamborghini that will be driven by Charlotte Gilbert in this race. Row 3 of the grid, it's Charlotte's husband, Warren Gilbert, that lines up on the inside of the third row of the grid with the Team Parker Racing Porsche of Miles Rudman sitting alongside. And row 4 of the grid, it's the leading car from Group GTH, the Aston Martin for Fawcetti Motorsport, Matthew Higgins. And he has got alongside the Ginetta in the hands of Ray Harris. Row 5 of the grid, number 31, driver we caught up with earlier on today, Charles Dawson. He sits alongside the second of the Fawcetti Motorsport Aston Martins, number 10 in the hands of Jody Sloss. And row 6 of the grid, there'll be the gap where we should have had the number 72 BMW. That is not out, so Doc Bush, number 75 in the Porsche, lines up on his own. The 7th row of the grid, it is the Paddock Motorsport McLaren Artura of Michael Orant, and he has got for company 86, which is the Ginetta of James Townsend. Row 8 of the grid is an all Morpheus Motorsport affair. John Curry lines up alongside Stephen Walton, his teammate, and the back of the grid is kind of a 370, which is the Jolt Racing McLaren of Rupert Williams, and then there'll be a gap alongside because we know that Jay Shepherd is not out at the wheel of the National Motorsport Academy. They have called it a day with the troublesome Lotus as it's been this weekend. So we've lost a few over the course of the weekend, but it still has been a great weekend of racing here at Brands Hatch. There's still a whole host of championship points up for grabs in each one of the respective groups, whether it be Group GTO for the open specification cars like the two that line up on the front row of the grid, whether it be GT3 like the Porsche that's just heading through shot now, GTC which caters for the challenge spec cars, whether it be Lamborghini Super Trofeo or Ferrari Challenge or Porsche Carrera Cup. That's the likes of the Lamborghinis and the Porsches, or whether it be Group GTH for the GT4 cars, or that car at the back that runs in Group GTA, Rupert Williams at the wheel of the Jolt Racing machine. So there's a raft of points all up for grabs, and over the course of the next 25 minutes, we will find out as to who is going to claim the final win of the weekend. We've seen 3 different winners so far this weekend: the number 2 Lamborghini, the number 6 Mercedes, the number 1 Brabham. Who might be able to pick up another win? Is somebody going to walk away with 2, or are we going to have 4 different winners out of the 4 races? Miles Rudman is absolutely flying. The red lights were on, but he's going to come over the start-finish line leading the way, which has got me scratching my head a little bit there. For a man who knows how to do rolling starts, he got his foot down and just kept going there. Didn't ease off at all, so he leads, or was leading the way. They go up towards Druids for the first time. Diving up inside comes Richard Neary. There's a little bit of jostling further back, but that's more just side-to-side movement of cars rather than anybody making contact with each other. And Miles Rudman, after the good start, is still running second on the road, but I strongly suspect that he was out of position at the start and therefore a penalty may well be heading in his direction. He leaves the door open for the Brabham BT62 of Paul Bailey to squeeze his way through. So Richard Neary leads the way, Paul Bailey second, Miles Rudman about to be attacked by the GT3 Porsche in the hands of Seamus Jennings. Seamus tries to draw himself alongside, heading up towards Hawthorne, but can't quite get round the Porsche. He might do it in a straight line with the extra aero coming out of the corner. And Miles Rudman will also be trying, hugely keen to keep those 2 Lamborghinis behind him from Top Cats Racing, which will be Charlotte Gilbert, followed by Warren Gilbert, I think. Big spin, and that's contact and a puncture by the look of things for the number 11 McLaren of Michael Orant. Now, was that contact that caused the puncture and the damage, or was that the puncture and the broken tyre that caused the damage? I don't know. So we'll have to wait and see, but he's going to limp that car back to the pit lane, but that is a rather second-hand Pirelli there, and that seemed to get away from him very, very quickly indeed. Over the start-finish line comes Miles Rudman, and he's been overtaken by Charlotte Gilbert there. Difficult to tell the 2 Top Cats Racing Lamborghinis apart. The only telltale sign is the wing mirrors. If they're pink, it's Charlotte Gilbert. If they're yellow, it's Warren Gilbert. And Warren Gilbert this time is having a little nibble at the inside of Miles Rudman. Gets very close to the coattails of the Porsche. The 2 lean on each other. Ray Harris at the wheel of the Ginetta's not too far away as well. He's another car that has been moved for today at least into Group GTC. And he's certainly mixing it with the rest of the cars. And the early stage leader of Group GTH is Charles Dawson. The McLaren is trying to limp back towards the pit lane area, but round through Stirling's it was almost at a standstill. Paddock Motorsport are ready to receive Michael Orant. A new Pirelli tyre ready to be bolted on, but all of the damage, I'm afraid, has been done. And we're side by side for the lead of Group GTH. Charles Dawson at the wheel of the Team Parker Racing Mercedes, having to stick his elbows out to try and keep Matthew Higgins at bay, but it is still Mercedes that leads Group GTH from Aston Martin, that's second in the group currently. Down through Dingle-Dell they'll go. They got the Ginetta of Ray Harris just up the road from them, then Miles Rudman at the wheel of the Porsche, who's now been overtaken by the second of the Top Cats Racing with Hex.com Lamborghini Huracans. Big cloud of cement dust being raised there, and you can see just about now limping back to the pits is the McLaren, but I do feel that may well be retirement for that car, with the bodywork damage as well as potentially any suspension damage from the trailing bits of tyre. But Michael has brought that car back to the pits as quickly as he can, but as safely as he can, so he doesn't tear the car apart. So good driving from him. And it's also meant that we've got the car now out of harm's way, and there's no need for any localised yellow flags or potential for safety car, so we can stay green. Group GTH lead battle still continuing. This is 8th and 9th overall. Charles Dawson fighting away with Matthew Higgins, as into the pit lane comes the McLaren. Paddock Motorsport will go to work to start with. They'll take the wheel off and inspect everything inside, and then should they deem it appropriate, they'll send that car back out again. Another battle going on in Group GTH. This is Jody Sloss, who has lost a place to John Curry, and although I think Stephen Walton was able to squeeze his way through there, so Jody was running 4th in Group GTH. That would have been 11th overall, but she's been picked off by the two Morpheus Motorsport Mercedes, I'm afraid. So she's going to drop down into 13th position and 6th in the group now. Now the next target for the two Morpheus cars, which are running nose to tail, is going to be to try and close up on the SVG Motorsport James Townsend driven Ginetta G56. That's the orange and black car, and yeah, I think new tyres been bolted on the McLaren, but there's no sign of it heading out onto track at the moment. Over the start finish line, great lead battle for what is the lead of Group GTC. Charlotte Gilbert, who has really come on superbly well, used to drive the Marcos Mantis for the team. This Lamborghini Huracan that was bought for her as a birthday present from her husband is just getting quicker and quicker and quicker behind the wheel. And there are problems for Jody Sloss. I did wonder why she'd lost 2 places in quick succession, but clearly the Forseti Motorsport Aston Martin has some sort of problem, and looks as though the number 10 car's heading towards the pit lane, and another potential retirement as well. Well, we saw what happened at the start when Miles Rudman got what was a way too good a start. I'm just not quite sure why he did what he did. There'll be a reason for sure, because Miles has been around a long period of time. 10-second penalty, out of position at the start is what we're hearing, and it also looks as though there's damage to the front of that Mercedes, is there not? Which may possibly have been caused either when it made contact with the McLaren. I don't know, didn't see it, but that is a damage to the rear of one car, damage to the front of another. Put 2 and 2 together, don't necessarily always get 4. Right, Morpheus Racing at it again, the two teammates. So John Curry keen to get on with it, keen to try and squeeze his way through and past his teammate, which is Stephen Walton. But the lighter green flashes to the front of the car tell you it's the number 69 car. The silver flashes to the front of John Curry's car tells you that it's the 96. That's the easiest way to tell those two very similarly liveried cars apart. We might also have a change. Oh, that was close for the lead of Group GTC. Charles Dawson just covered off the move from Matthew Higgins there. Charles was a little bit slower coming in towards Clearways and Clark Curve than the Aston Martin behind, but he just managed to position the Mercedes where he wanted it. So for the moment, he still clings on to the lead of Group GTH, which is for the GT4 homologated cars. And they're not that far off still, the Group GTC car of Ray Harris, the Ginetta G56. In towards Graham Hill Bend, still wheel to wheel, again just being pushed a little bit wide. There was Charles Dawson, but he had to go wide, otherwise there would have been contact between himself and Matthew Higgins. But it's still Mercedes that hangs on to the lead of Group GTH, only just from Matthew Higgins, who is fairly new to motorsport, did a bit of Formula 4 out in the USA, but largely it was karting last year, where he was senior Rotax Max champion in karting. Charles Dawson did a bit of European GT4 last year, as well as a few forays in towards GT Cup. Partnered up with former British GT champion Seb Morris. And this might be the opportunity here. Down through Dingledale, the Aston Martin has the inside line. Matthew Higgins goes through and picks up the lead of Group GTH. Not for the want of trying, as far as Charles Dawson was concerned, and then he still tries to outbrake him around the outside at Stirling's, but doesn't quite work. Aston Martin finally picks up the lead of the group with 17 minutes to go. Now that Aston Martin has been the group winner, what was it, all 4 times I think at Donington Park it secured victory in its group, if memory serves me correctly. Yes it did, and it has also claimed another group win earlier on this season. So let's have a quick look at the restart of the race then. Keep your eyes on the Porsche at this restart, because there is Miles Rudman. He should be on the 3rd row of the grid, yet they haven't even got to the start-finish line, and he's in the lead. So I'm not quite sure why or what happened there, and also try and keep an eye exactly what happens here in towards the braking area for McLaren's. Keep an eye on the McLaren. Does it go into the back of Charles Dawson? Yes, it does. You can see bits of debris going into the air there as Michael Arant goes a little bit into the back of Charles Dawson, not by much, and then there's another little brush into the side of Jody Sloss as they come out of the corner, and those 2 little bits of contact there may be possibly what caused the spin and the puncture for that McLaren, which then, heading round through Westfield, spun directly in front of James Townsend's Ginetta, and James really had to react to that as quickly as possible to avoid contact. So Richard Neary comfortably leading the way at this stage, and is looking good to try and score another victory. Remember, they did win the race yesterday, the pit stop race, himself and Ian Loggy. Richard charged away and built up something like a 20-25 second lead in the first part of the race, and Ian Loggy stroked the car home so that they still finished with a 15.8 second advantage. At the moment, 11.2 seconds is the lead advantage between themselves and Paul Bailey. Seamus Jennings is still 3rd, and this is the battle still for 4th and 5th place. The 2 Top Cats Racing with Hex.com Lamborghinis. Warren Gilbert still behind his wife at the moment, and on the basis Warren is only doing the sprint races, Charlotte is doing the full season. Are the team orders in place, or are they free to race? That's the question. Warren's not close enough anyway at the moment to do anything about Charlotte Gilbert. Saying Charlotte really has just got to grips beautifully this last 18 months with the Lamborghini, and is absolutely a match for anybody else in Group GTC, including her husband at the moment, as they head out of Westfield and down through Dingle Dell. Wonderful part of the circuit, so picturesque, the Brands Hatch Grand Prix loop, with the trees now in full bloom, the shadows that they cast over the circuit, the beautifully manicured grass, such as the Brands Hatch maintenance team. There's nothing not to like about GT cars on the Grand Prix circuit at Brands Hatch. The drivers love it, the teams love it, the spectators love it as well. So how long have we got in the race? We've got 14 minutes remaining. Paul Bailey is 13 seconds adrift of the race leader, but is 14 seconds up the road from Seamus Jennings behind. We've still got the 2 Morpheus Racing teammates going at it. Stephen Walton under pressure from John Curry, who thought about getting up the inside there at Stirling's, but just managed to back out of it in the end. They're still busy squabbling away over 11th and 12th place. This will be 4th and 5th in Group GTH, and there's nothing to choose between the pair of them. Over the start-finish time now will come, and it's still Stephen Walton being chased up towards Paddock Hill Bend by John Curry. So whilst those 2 are squabbling, let's see if we can look back at exactly what caused the puncture for Michael Arant. So as they came out of Drewis, there's a little bit of a touch with Jody Sloss. Then as they come downhill and in towards the braking area for... Right, okay, yep, so that ties up why there's damage to the back end of the McLaren and why there's damage to the front end of the Aston Martin. That also sorts out as to why then the McLaren had the puncture. At the time, I did say trying to put 2 and 2 together and might not get 4, but that replay, fantastic stuff by the production team, allows us to pick out exactly what happened there. So yeah, it was Jody Sloss into the back of Michael Arant. That caused the damage to both cars and ultimately caused the puncture that allowed the McLaren to spin in the first place. So it looks as though both of those cars, I'm sad to say, came into the pit lane and subsequently have not reappeared. So they are both out of the race as a result of that brush between the pair of them. So 12.5 minutes to go, there or thereabouts. Morpheus Racing still at it. John Curry as yet cannot find a way through and past Stephen Walton. So the 2 Mercedes still nose to tail. Such has been their squabbling. They've dropped away a shade more from Ray Harris at the wheel of the... Sorry, they've dropped away a shade more from James Townsend, I should say, at the wheel of the Ginetta. We've also now, of course, had that change for the lead of Group GTH, which means that Matthew Higgins now at the wheel of the number 9 Forseti Motorsport Aston Martin has pulled away from the car that had been leading it, which is Charles Dawson. And I think Matthew Higgins is beginning to not only pull away from Charles Dawson, he's beginning to close in on the Group GTC number 25 Ginetta in the hands of Ray Harris. Last time through, Ray did 1 minute 33.0. Yes, 1 minute 32.6 for Matthew Higgins behind. So the Aston Martin is catching the car in 7th place. Now Ray Harris's Ginetta runs in a different group, Group GTC, whereas it's Group GTH for the Aston Martin. Now, throughout the sector of this lap, Mikey Porter was a little bit slower through the first sector. Through the second sector, it looks as though they're about matched for pace, but I think the gap has come down once more. It was 9/10 of a second, just under a second last time through. This time through, Matthew Higgins looking as though he might just have edged a little bit closer, not by much. And there, I'm afraid, that's a spin, and that's Charlotte Gilbert that's had the spin. That's coming out of Druids, where she's had the spin. The Lamborghini is off to the inside of the circuit, so she's come out of Druids, and it's spat the car over to the right-hand side of the circuit. Now, was that just getting on the throttle too early? Was there a mechanical issue, or surely not any contact between herself and her husband Warren? That would be absolutely the last thing that either of them would wish. Now we're starting to see back marker lappery now, because Richard Neary is starting to close up on the 2 GT4 Mercedes, and he needs to get past them quickly because he'll be coming into the yellow flag zone, because we've still got the Lamborghini of Charlotte Gilbert stricken at the moment. So yellow flag's there. Richard Neary sees the yellow flag, sensible driving, does not overtake, sits behind, and just then as he starts to be able to overtake again, he can now work his way through and past Charlotte Gilbert, who is finally recovering at the wheel of the Lamborghini, but that cost her a whole raft of time. It puts her husband Warren Gilbert into the lead of Group GTC. He's also moves Miles Rudman up to second in Group GTC now. So Richard Neary now, with no yellow flags to worry about, can carve his way past the GT4 Mercedes. Through Hawthorne Bend they'll go, and let's just have a quick look. So Charlotte Gilbert comes up towards Druids. Her husband Warren Gilbert is way too far behind as they go into the corner, and she's just a little bit keen on the throttle coming out, loses the tail end of the car and loses all of that time and the lead of the group, I'm afraid. Such a shame. Still time to fight back though, still 9 minutes of this race to go. Charlotte Gilbert will have dropped down to, I think, maybe 12th position, something like that. But of course the performance of the Super Trofeo spec Lamborghini should allow her to carve her way back up through the order. So she'll come over the start-finish line this time through running in 11th position, having gained 1 place back from Stephen Walton. She gains the other place back on the run in towards Paddock Hill Bend, but she is now off the lead lap of the race and is running 4th in Group GTC. So 8.5 minutes to go. Richard Neary picks his way for the 12th time out of Graham Hill Bend and along the Cooper Straight. Everybody up to and including 9th place now has been lapped. So James Townsend at the wheel of the number 86 SVG Motorsport Ginetta goes a lap down. Richard Neary's lead advantage has shrunk through the traffic, understandably so because of those yellow flags. So Paul Bailey didn't have to ease off as much and wasn't stuck behind traffic when he was trying to overtake it through a yellow flag zone, which Richard was. So the lead advantage shrunk on that lap by 3 seconds from Mercedes to second place, number 1 Brabham. But I say that was largely to do with traffic and yellow flags all happening at the same time. And of course Richard Neary can't overtake under yellow flags, otherwise he would lose even more time or potentially be excluded from the result. So he did the right thing, backed off, saw the yellow flags, good driving. Through the traffic and through and past Rupert Williams at the wheel of the Jolt Racing McLaren goes the 3rd place Porsche in the hands of Seamus Jennings. He is now 23 seconds adrift of the 2nd place car of Paul Bailey. So fairly distant 3rd place for Seamus Jennings, but it's still been a good weekend for the GCAT Racing Porsche. Started the weekend with a 4th, then had a 2nd in the pit stop race yesterday. They were 3rd in the pit stop race earlier on today. Shame they can't accumulate a few more championship points in Group GT3, but There's less entrance in it in 2024 for some reason. But the car has run brilliantly well so far this season. Over the start-finish line, that threads its way with 7 minutes to go. Now, have we got any battles out on circuit? One of the best of the battles we've still got is the two Morpheus Racing cars. We've got Warren Gilbert at the wheel of the number 3 Lamborghini, leading Group GTC at the moment. He's running in 4th place overall. The two Morpheus Racing Mercedes still together, with John Curry ahead now of Stephen Walton. So that happened a few laps ago where they swapped over. And it took a long time, didn't it, for John Curry to be able to squeeze his way through and ahead of Stephen Walton. And since doing so, he's not really been able to pull away either, has he? So the two of them are still very much together as they thread their way through the left-hander at Stirling's. They are on lap number 12 at the moment. The race leader is already on lap number 14, would you believe? And last time through, Richard Neary set fastest lap of the race. 1 minute 25.727. 125.727, and I said I thought the track temperature was higher now than it was earlier on, and again that fastest lap is at this stage still about 1.5 seconds slower than we saw as the fastest lap earlier on today when David Brabham did that in the pit stop race. Now, David is the pro. We've got Richard, who's a sporting driver behind the wheel. I think generally for most of the cars the lap times are slower now this afternoon in the warmer conditions than they were this morning. Now Stephen Walton has not given up his hope of trying to squeeze his way back through and ahead of his teammate John Curry once more. So he's having a go, but it hasn't quite worked there at the moment. So the speeds begin to build, and as they head down towards Hawthorne Bend, last time through you can see on lap number 12, 0.4 of a second quicker was Stephen Walton compared to John Curry. Previous few laps, John Curry was that little bit quicker, so the gap had edged away, and all of a sudden it started to close up again once more. And I think these two are going to be at it for probably the remainder of the race as well, one would have thought. Up towards Stirling's. Again, Stephen Walton looking to see if he can prise the door open, but wasn't quite quick enough. Subtly different line taken in towards Clearways Corner. John Curry will have the momentum on the way out, and therefore with 4 minutes to go, the gap between the pair of them is still hovering around half a second. It's just 0.493 of a second as they came over the start-finish line. For our race leader though, Richard Neary, traffic to deal with, and it's going to be the Group GTH leading Aston Martin that he's about to place a lap on. So that's the 7th place car that he's going to squeeze his way through and past. Matthew Higgins. Won't be that much longer before he gets past the 6th place car, which is going to be the Dayglow yellow car, the Ginetta that lies ahead in the hands of Ray Harris. Good to see Ray out in the championship this weekend. Not had the opportunity to catch up with him yet, but hopefully we'll see more of Ray, who has been competing this car in other championships previously. But good to see him out in GT Cup, and he's about to be gobbled up by our race leader, who is going to be starting not the penultimate lap this time through. I think it'll be penultimate lap next time through for Richard Neary. So the one he started and 2 more thereafter. So that's everybody up to and including 6th place that has now been lapped. Now Richard Neary, 13.8 seconds to the good over Paul Bailey's Brabham at this stage. I mentioned earlier on that the 3rd place number 33 Porsche of Seamus Jennings is a long way adrift as well. Has been running very much on its own as it comes up towards the end of the lap. What is the gap going to be between Seamus Jennings and in 3rd place and the 2nd place Brabham BT62? It's going to be a sizable one, 20 plus seconds, that's absolutely for sure. 31 actually over the start-finish line, so very much running on its own. And then 4th at the moment is going to be Warren Gilbert at the wheel of his Group GTC leading Lamborghini Huracan, but he is also a long way adrift of the 3rd place car, so the top 4 looking reasonably settled. However, further down through the order, the fight for who wants to be 11th and who wants to be 12th, or 4th and 5th in Group GTH if you want, is still very much up for dispute. John Curry is still under pressure from Stephen Walton. The gap between the pair of them was just a 1/10 of a second as they came over the start-finish line last time through. They've also got the Porsche of Seamus Jennings that's going to place a lap on them before too much longer, so they will need to be aware again that the blue flags will be waved at them shortly, and that's just to forewarn them what's happening. It doesn't mean they need to move offline. It's up to the quicker cars to feed their way through. And for John Curry, he is certainly not going to make it easy. He will make sure that he allows that faster car to come through when it suits him and not before, because he's still got his teammate flashing his lights right behind him, Stephen Walton, who is very quick through this section of the circuit. The two of them are still going to be pretty much together as they head up towards Clearways Corner, and the Porsche of Seamus Jennings has now almost caught them, but I think we'll get past both of them, probably on the Brabham Straight, with just 60 seconds to go before too much longer. So the blue flags wave there, picked out by the marshals. The Mercedes stay nose to tail over the start-finish line, and Seamus Jennings has not been able to pick them off just as yet. Might pick one off on the run-up in towards Druids. So flash of the lights, dives up the inside of Stephen Walton, but then thinks better of it because he knows those two cars ahead are squabbling. Stephen Walton then runs wide and onto the dusty tarmac. Through goes the Porsche, and now it allows John Curry to make sure that he loses as minimum time as possible, letting the traffic through, and he needs to make sure that he covers off Stephen Walton once more. There's a touch almost between the pair of them. So they are still at it, and Stephen Walton's now trying to throw one up the inside, heading in towards Surtees by the look of things. But again, John Curry, having none of it, rolls his sleeves up and says, not a chance. It's like a couple of prize fighters, aren't they, slugging it out. And at the moment, there is 0 to choose between either of them. 5-second penalty, however, that'll sort it out. Going out to car number 69, Stephen Walton, for track limits. So even if he manages to go through and past John Curry now, which he hasn't been able to do just as yet still, he would need to then gain 5 seconds on him to maintain position. So if he stays where he is still, I think, 5 seconds ahead of the next car behind, is he? Yes, he is. So I think even if he overtakes, 12th is where Stephen Walton is going to end up. The clock, however, has ticked to 0, which means that the race leader, Richard Neary, is on his final lap of the race and on course to try and make it 2 wins this weekend for Team ABBA Racing, for himself and Ian Logie, two drivers who historically have always gone up against each other competing in GT Cup, but have opted to drive together as teammates for the 2024 championship season, and it certainly means that they are going to leave Brands Hatch with another good haul of points. They came into this weekend lying 5th in the championship standings, and the two teammates have made contact with each other. John Curry and Stephen Walton have finally come together up at Druids, and when they recover, it will be John Curry that gets back onto the tarmac quicker, as over the start-finish line comes Richard Neary to claim the second win of the weekend for the Team ABBA Racing Mercedes AMG GT3, and also picks up the win in Group GT3, Group GTO, I should say, that car runs in for this weekend. Here comes the Brabham of Paul Bailey, the BT62. Fantastic soundtrack that it makes. He will come through to finish in second place, and he's also the second of the cars home in Group GTO. We'll await the arrival of Seamus Jennings shortly over the start-finish line. We've already had through the winner of Group GTH, which was the Aston Martin of Matthew Higgins. We've also had through Warren Gilbert, who picks up the win in Group Group GTC at the wheel of his Lamborghini Huracan. But where is Seamus Jennings at the wheel of the Porsche? He should be the next one through, as we get a replay of Stephen Walton up the inside of his teammate, clatter into each other, and be interesting to see what conversations go on in Morpheus Racing at the end of that one. They both largely got away with it, but I think Stephen Walton was probably just so desperate to try and get through and try to open a door that arguably John was always going to close. But no real harm done. A few scuffs to both cars. They'll no doubt chat about it and have a beer later on and discuss the finer points of it themselves. So last couple of cars over the start-finish line. We just need now number 75, Doc Bush, to come through at the wheel of the Team Parker Racing number 75 car to take the checkered flag. And as he comes over the start-finish line, that is everybody through that was still running at the end of that race. And that also now means that very shortly we can confirm some results for you for round 8 of the GT Cup Championship. Remember, it's only 2 weeks' time and we're all off to Snetterton in Norfolk for another quadruple header there. As it is a win, second of the weekend for Richard Neary at the wheel of the Mercedes, with Paul Bailey coming home in second place and the Group GT3 winner Seamus Jennings finishing in third. The winning Group GTC went the way of the car that was in fourth, Warren Gilbert, with Ray Harris there in fifth, and the winning Group GTH went the way of Matthew Higgins and the number 9 Aston Martin, who finished in sixth place. Miles Rudman was seventh. Of course, he did jump the start, so was given a time penalty. Charles Dawson finished in eighth place, and Charlotte Gilbert, despite the spin, recovered to finish in ninth, with James Townsend completing the top 10. Then in 11th place, it was John Curry, who recovered after the spin with his teammate on the start of the final lap. He finished in 11th place. Stephen Walton, his teammate, recovered to finish in 12th place, with Doc Bush in 13th. Rupert Williams in 14th was the last of the finishers, because contact between Jody Sloss and Michael Arant early on meant that both the Aston Martin and the McLaren Artura went into the pit lane and retired, and were not to be seen again in round 8 of the 2024 GT Cup Championship. So that is it. Our racing is done for the weekend here at Brands Hatch. Ideal, perfect weather conditions on a stunning Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit. But we'll do it all again in just 2 weeks' time on the 1st and the 2nd of June at Snetterton in Norfolk on the 300 circuit. And you can join us all for that action there over the course of that weekend. So from everybody here, GT Cup, Butte Motorsport and Onside Productions, thanks for joining us. We'll see you again at Snetterton in just a couple of weekends' time.